Fit for Life Radio, episode number 87. Moving along, today we're going to be talking about plant-based diets.
Flipping the script.
Yeah, not really flipping the script so
Nah.
much. Last week we talked about in defense of meat, which really parlays into this in defense of plant-based diets, which is the main takeaway. And if you listened to the in defense of meat, was that oftentimes people will mistaken meat as empty calories, right?
Yeah,
No
a
nutrition.
bad food.
So then say they replace meat, which is a whole unprocessed food. Maybe they were eating 16 ounces of lean meat a day, like about 400 to 500 calories. And then you replace it, but then you gravitate maybe towards Coca-Cola or Pringles, right? So you replace it with a vegan option
foods.
that's processed. You made a net loss in your nutrition in your diet, right? So for some people, it's deciding where that's at. But even then, and I know for me personally, I'm somewhat biased towards a plant-based diet because that's what I've eaten forever, but more a whole food plant-based diet to where I'm at now, to where I'm healthy, I have good health markers, I have good energy, body composition, because if you break it down to volume, food volume, say I've always typically eaten 200 to 300 grams of carbs a day, moderate protein and fat, which works out to, on average, I've always had anywhere from 1 to 1.5 pounds of meat typically, and then maybe some yogurt or dairy, protein powder. So about 1.5 pounds of animal food, and then 200 to 300 grams of carbs, essentially made up of anywhere from 2 to 4 pounds of plant food. That's been my diet on average personally, so which is plant-based, right? By food volume, it's almost double or is double the plant food versus the animal food.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's something people forget is like when you're eating a whole food diet and really balanced, like you're actually getting most of that from plants. People have, veggies or fruit with basically every meal, and usually like a lot more volume than they would with their meat. Meat's a little more, I guess, dense. But that's a lot. It's a lot of food, and that would be considered plant-based. That doesn't mean that you don't have any animal products. It just means that you have more plants than animals in your diet.
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of people will get caught up is sometimes people always, the extreme side of things is always the most, has the most gravitational pull. So when people hear a vegan diet, which means no animal food, we'll get into the nuanced differences. They maybe think, oh, that's got to be the best version, right? When the reality is it's a spectrum. And most people, and we recommend most people kind of, eating plant-based, but omnivorous. Again, like we talked about, go back to in defense of meat, it is a whole unprocessed food with lots of nutrition. So it gives you more, by including that food group, you get more access to a wider variety of nutrients. It makes things easier and more sustainable, right? So the pitfalls to say, let's go towards the extreme vegan side, is the sustainability.
Yeah.
86% of people who embark on a vegan, 100% plant-based approach go back, quit, or fall off, or whatever. So, it's not as sustainable. Now, typically, if you have a deep why, a deep reason, that's what you need.
It makes
to
it a
make
little
that
bit
approach
easier,
sustainable, and just you understand the trade-offs that are involved, then it can work just fine, right? So what we want to do today is a lot of times people, again, they'll hear the word meat, you hear the word plant, and then emotions just get really,
going.
Like right now, the popular thing is the carnivore diet, right? So now people are identifying
As carnivores.
And then their whole personal identity becomes their diet, right? And that's the same thing. Vegans, carnivores, they start to get very emotionally attached to these things. And yeah, if you want to look at things as a light switch and on and off, that's typically what's going to happen. Whereas the reality is it's a spectrum, it's a dial, and most people just need to find their place along that. So with today's episode, we're going to kind of go over plant-based nutrition, maybe some of the nuanced differences, the benefits, the pitfalls, and kind of the different ways to make it succeed. The first thing to kind of always have in the back of your mind is the real battle is typically not meat versus plant, or in finding 50-50, 60-40, 80-20. It's typically, those same ratios, but whole unprocessed foods versus a processed food diet. Because then, you could be eating 100% plant-based vegan, but guess what? Coca-Cola, soda, chips,
vegan
Pringles,
cookies,
cookies, that would be plant-based, but it's all junk food.
It's just,
it's all processed food.
You're way worse off eating that.
Which the pitfall we've described is, then those foods are easy to overeat. You consume more calories than you need. They're not as nutrient dense. So now you're consuming excess calories and getting minimal
and less nutrition.
Nutrition, right? That's a problem. I don't care if you 100% plant-based, 100%. Well, that is the one catch with like carnivore or 100% animal-based is there's some nutrition in there, but you can still, you're missing you're missing a lot of things. So again, it's very unsustainable. Makes it much harder. Those two extreme ends.
Yep.
So with plant-based, you're typically looking at, you have vegetarian, you have vegan, a newer
this one trips
term
me up,
is
man.
flexitarian. All of those are considered plant-based.
Yeah.
And also, just like a Mediterranean diet, plant-based includes animal protein. A regular omnivore diet is typically plant-based. So yeah, all those things are kind of blanketed under the term plant-based diets, which causes a lot of confusion. So, it depends on who you talk to. Some people will say that if you eat any meat, you're not plant-based.
Yeah.
Right? Again, if more than half your diet comes from plants, how are you not plant-based? People
it's just like gatekeeping. They don't want you to be plant-based if you eat meat.
So that's that people will get hung up on that. So with those, again, in general, it's a spectrum. Some people have high meat consumption, what would be considered high, but are still plant-based, right? Some people have very low meat consumption or no meat consumption and are plant-based. Majority of diets are plant-based unless people don't include any plants.
Yeah, if
right?
you're carnivore, you're not plant-based.
So think about it. A strict vegan is 100%.
Yeah, 100% plant-based.
A strict carnivore,
0%.
0%. There's your ends of your spectrum. Where do you fall along there?
Tons of room in the middle.
And we want to defend, being plant-based, and again, even if you go 100%, why someone would choose to do that, how they can make it work, diving into all that. So those are your types. Typically, we'll kind of break it down into, let's see here, get my numbers right. The percentages, and again, when we use these types of percentages, it's just so you can kind of conceptualize in your head. You don't have to be like counting exactly. But typically, when we talk about whole food versus unprocessed food, 80-20, so 80% of your food intake, if it's coming from whole foods, so minimally processed whole foods, then that's a whole food based diet. More than 20% of your diet is coming from highly processed foods. You kind of want to put yourself in the camp of I have a processed food diet. So think 80-20, right? Then an omnivore diet would be you eat meat, seafood, dairy, eggs, and plants. Pescatarian, you eat meat seafood, dairy, eggs. I'm sorry. You eat mostly plants as well as seafood.
There you go.
I was reading from above. So, pescatarian, you eat essentially seafood, so only animal food. Vegetarian, you eat mostly plants as well as dairy and eggs. And then you have, a vegan who eats only plants. All right, so hopefully that,
Sets the stage.
sets the stage. Now, some typical pros of plant-based and vegetarian diets is they are associated with a lower risk of heart disease, diabetes, cancer, kidney disease. Now, this is one of the main reasons a lot of people choose. They end up having health issues or fears or know people, so they choose to go more plant-based or vegetarian
For health reasons,
cutting
yeah.
out meat for the associated benefits. Right now, the thing is, plant-based eaters may be healthier not because they eat less meat, but rather because they are also plant-based diets are attractive to health-conscious individuals. So people who are going to eat more.
So
whole,
people who probably exercise and get enough sleep and, are just what I would consider a healthy type individual already.
Yep.
Like they already have those habits lined up. So they're more likely to be, they're less likely to have any of those ailments anyways.
where someone who smokes, overeats junk food, doesn't exercise, typically eats less plants too, right?
Yeah.
Because plants take more work. You got to cook them.
They don't taste
You
as
got to
good.
go shop for them, right? Yeah. So another reason is plant-based eaters, they do eat more plants, and they are highly correlated to positive health protective effects. Fruits, veggies, all those things, right? Another reason is similar to those. They're more nutrient dense, whole foods. So again, another reason why the correlation against meat starts whole and processed meat gets shakier, because as it being like this definitive problem because it is nutrient dense and there's lots of benefits to it. So in general, that's where like your lifestyle factors seem to be the main cause, body composition as well for the adverse health effects that we mentioned, heart disease, diabetes, cancer. So yeah, but so there's a high correlation. People with improved risk factors include plants in their lifestyle.
And I feel like people that include, like when you're having a lot more plants in your diet, you're a whole lot less likely to eat other stuff. Like there's just not as much room.
And they're higher in fiber.
Yeah, like you're a little more satiated and you're not going to be, ravenously hungry and, looking for chips somewhere in your house. Usually people that eat a lot of plants are a little more full and just like fine.
Yeah. And for me personally, and also I think that's one of the main benefits, especially if someone along the scale of why I eat less and less animal food and more plant food, is the benefit of food volume. Now the problem, if you're eating processed vegan food, plant food, that benefit kind of goes out the window.
Yeah, that doesn't exist with that.
So because now you're talking sugar and flour based stuff, which the food volume is awful. Right, but now if you're talking, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, the food volume is very large. So you're eating. What we mean by that is there's a lot of space of food, and then the calorie density and whatnot is lower. So that is a very, very big positive. Now, cons, and we kind of touched on a little bit, is they tend to, nowadays, unfortunately, a plant-based diet can be highly processed foods. Like your entire diet can be highly processed and still be plant-based, or even if you're 100% vegan, you can be 100% vegan and have a very processed food diet.
And we know, like, over the past, I'll say 5 years, the alternatives, just in general, for like any type of food, the vegan alternatives are just way more widespread, whether it's just like vegan snacks like cookies or vegan chips. I don't know, chips might be vegan. The meat alternatives, which are just straight up processed stuff to be almost like meat. Yeah, it's like protein. Oil and pea protein is basically what those turn into. But those are processed foods, and they're so much easier to get, and they're cheaper. And people want I guess, similar things to what they used to eat while still, I guess, checking the box of vegan or plant-based.
And then as with any, whether it is more omnivorous or more vegan along the spectrum, any highly unprocessed based diet is going to be more deficient in nutrients, right? Which is a problem. So, and then even a very well formulated whole food complete plant-based approach is going to need some extra consideration with specific nutrients.
Yeah, there's some stuff you just can't get, or maybe you get very little of.
And that's where then we talk about sustainability. So a lot of these nutrients, if you just eat some animals, they come a lot easier, which are specific. There's specific amino acids that our body can't make. We have to get them from food. And in all animal food, they're there.
They're complete.
Complete. With the plant foods, you could miss some, right? So you have to make sure you eat certain types of foods to get them.
Those mashups are important.
So again, this is where it's just on the spectrum of sustainability. Someone may have the interest and desire to kind of plan that out more and know, and some people might not. And then they may start to not feel as great because they're deficient in some nutrients and resort back to, including more animal food. So again, that's the sustainability factor that we're looking at. Now with some of those nutrients that are more specific, and we'll go into how you can get them from plants, which you can. Calcium. So one major thing to realize with any nutrient is it's not just about how much is known or said to be in that food. It's also about the bioavailability, our body's ability to break it down and actually process it and put it to use.
Yeah.
So a good example of that is calcium. There's a high amount of calcium in something like broccoli.
Yeah, leafy greens in general are going to have a lot.
Leafy greens, but they're not as bioavailable as dairy, right? So a dairy could even have less listed calcium than the leafy green or broccoli, but you actually absorb more of it, right? So you just simply will have to eat a lot of broccoli and leafy greens, which isn't good nor bad. It's really, again, personal preference, because some people may, this is a lot of food volume. I love this food. I can eat it all. Some people may start to have digestive distress or not enjoy it, and then they're forcing it. So again, personal, it comes down to those trade-offs. But yes, so you want to go over some of the specific foods that are, so you'd want to make sure to consume a few servings of these high calcium plants.
Leafy greens are like probably the one that most people know the most. You can get it from tofu, like certain types of tofu. Molasses is one I didn't even...
Yeah, blackstrap molasses.
Had a bunch of calcium. Edamame, soy nuts. They fortify a lot of plant milk, so oat milk, almond milk, soy milk with calcium now, to be a lot more like, regular dairy milk. And then if you want to increase your absorption, cooked greens are going to give you more calcium than raw greens.
Yeah.
Things are a little more broken down, and it's just easier for our body to assimilate that.
Yeah, and that's for most food cooked.
Yeah.
Like that's a benefit of cooking, is it makes a lot of nutrients more bioavailable. Another one, probably the most common one that people kind of know of, is vitamin B12.
Yeah.
Which is super important.
Very important for your nervous system.
You have to have it. Many people are deficient, especially the older you get, and if you eat meat or not is a big factor. So it's probably the one where it's just a good idea to supplement.
Yeah, it's hard to get from plants and to get a good version of it.
And it's, again, like red meat, eggs, super high in vitamin B12. Now, obviously, if you're 100% vegan, you're going to want a supplement that's vegan. And I believe they make it from actually like bacteria or something.
I think they do, yeah.
Fermentation. There's something along bacteria and fermentation, and they're able to make a vegan B12. So that's, definitely something you normally, if you're going to be 100% plant-based or lean that way, you'd probably want to look into a B12 vitamin.
Yeah, that's a big one. I would say if I were to do it, that'd be a non-negotiable for me. Like I would just straight up do it.
Yeah. Then another one is omega-3 fats.
So
important. We have to have them.
Yeah, and those are, I guess, most people would probably think of like fish, fattier fish like salmon or something like that. is where you would get that for most people. But, we can still get it from plant food. So anything that comes from the sea, basically. Seaweed's a good one that you can get it from. Now you have to eat a good amount of seaweed.
And that's an example of how many people
are going to eat seaweed.
Are going to eat seaweed.
Exactly.
But luckily, it's in some common.
Yeah, and then you can get omega-3s from nuts.
If you know me, you know I'm always on the run, up early and home late, so having a 3-hour morning routine isn't really in the cards for me. What is in the cards is AG1. It's a fast way to get vitamins and minerals I need to perform. I first gave AG1 a try because I wanted a single solution that helps support my entire body by filling in nutrient gaps and simplifying my morning routine. Since drinking AG1 daily, I've always felt strong and energized and ready to attack the day. Not only does AG1 deliver my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more, it's a powerful, healthy habit that's also powerfully simple. It's one scoop mixed in water once a day and every day. I know that AG1 is giving my body high-quality nutrition. Every batch of AG1 goes through a rigorous testing process, so you know that it's safe. And AG1 ingredients are sourced for absorption, potency, and nutrition density. AG1 is a supplement that I trust to provide the support my body needs daily, and that's why I'm excited to welcome them as a new partner. Here is your chance to start every day this season with a gift to yourself. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/provengrit. That's drinkag1.com/provengrit. Check it out.
Like that's a really good one.
Walnuts.
Chia seeds.
I think more specifically though, it has
is
walnuts.
walnuts.
Yeah.
Just walnut. It is just walnuts.
Yeah.
Chia seeds, hemp seeds, soy,
Flaxseed.
flaxseed.
That's the most common one. People ground flaxseed.
And people just put it in their like
Smoothie.
shakes and smoothies and stuff. That's a really easy one and really common these days. Hemp seeds, kind of hemp's. I'll say newer on the scene these days, but that's another really good one, and that has some other benefits too. So that's possible to supplement. It's just, again, you probably have to eat a little bit more because I think your body doesn't convert that quite as well as it does, the omega-3s we get from animal type stuff, fish, sardines, things like that.
Another one, a common one, is iron. And what a lot of people don't realize, iron carries oxygen around your body, so it can lead to low levels of energy, so high levels of fatigue. And that's what a lot of people experience when they maybe switch to a vegan diet. Like their energy levels go down over time and they're like, what's wrong with me? Maybe I need to eat more food. But a lot of times it's you start to have really low iron levels because iron is readily bioavailable in meat. It's a little harder to find. But with plants, you want to make sure also that you're having foods that are high in iron and contain iron, and also foods that are high in vitamin C. All right. So ideally, those foods kind of in combination, they work together. Vitamin C helps you absorb iron. So some foods, plant-based foods rich in iron, are pumpkin seeds, tofu, tempeh, edamame, lentils and beans. You may start to notice a recurring theme that like beans, lentils make their way in on all these lists. So that's should be a staple food.
Yeah, those are pretty nutrient dense.
Peas, nuts, leafy greens, potatoes. So plenty of iron, and then pairing it with vitamin C rich foods. Most people know those. Citrus fruit. We talked about broccoli is also high in vitamin C.
Peppers is one that people sleep on a little bit.
Yep. And red bell pepper probably has the most actually compared to any other food. Kiwi's another one. Potatoes, white potatoes, I believe. I don't know if sweet potatoes have vitamin C. I know white potatoes
I know
do.
white potatoes do. Yeah, that's it.
So yeah. So again, you can get it. It's just knowing, hey, I got to have some of these foods in my diet.
And working a little bit harder.
Yeah.
If you eat meat, you're lucky. You just eat meat and you're good, and you're good generally, but this takes a little more work.
Whereas if you can start to see where if you're just eating cereal and Pop-Tarts,
You're missing a lot.
You're vegan, but all of a sudden you're not getting these nutrients. And at first you're not going to notice, but over time, nutrient deficiencies, that's when they start to kind of.
I think that's probably why a lot of people end up getting off of, like switching back. They
just don't know how to do it right.
Yeah, and maybe feeling, and this is completely just speculative, but feeling like low iron and like, man, I feel like crap. And then they know that before they felt better, and so they gravitate back towards it. That might be one reason. Yeah. But if you are deficient in anything, if you're deficient in protein, you're going to start to feel just a little bit off, B12 is another one. Like, that's a big part of keeping your nervous system healthy, and you're going to feel real crappy if your B12 is low. So if you combine all of those, you got low B12, low iron, you're going to start to feel pretty shady all the time.
But, so again, know the foods that you can include. Again, you'll notice if you're sticking to whole, unprocessed plant foods, you're going to get a lot of nutrition, right? And there may be just a few specific foods you want to make sure to include. Okay, so there's that, the doom and gloom. Now let's talk about people who do best on plant-based diets. Typically, they're open-minded. They're going to embrace minimally processed whole foods, and that really goes for anything, right? That's the whole point.
Pretty much any diet.
Right? So they also are going to be more willing, to cook, search out, because if you're excluding meat and dairy, that's going to exclude a lot of restaurants and food options. So you have to be a little more, do your due diligence. You're going to family, friends. That's going to be a thing. Right? How people support you or don't support you and how you handle that. That is a factor. And then we've touched on this a little. So you need a deep why. Anytime there's going to be more factors working against you, it's important to have that deep why. For a lot of people, it could be a major health issue or to them or someone they love.
Or animal welfare. You just don't like how animals are treated and you don't want to eat those products. And that carries a lot of people. Yeah,
it could be environmental issues. It could be digestive issues. A lot of people with dairy or meat could have digestive stuff, so it's easier. They feel better eating more plant-based or completely plant-based. Or it could just simply be food preference.
Yeah, I just don't like meat and I like plants, and that's good enough.
When we're meeting with clients, normally you have to have a starting point for everywhere, right? In general, we lean towards moderation in most places. Same with food choices. So we'll kind of, maybe start someone with lean them towards a more omnivorous whole food approach. But they may right off the bat, say they don't like meat, right? Or they don't enjoy it. Cool, no problem.
Then we're shifting gears.
Yeah, let's shift gears and look at some of these other food choices and along the spectrum, more plant-based approach. It's as simple as that, right? So you should never have to force yourself to eat one specific food.
Never.
So keep that in mind. It's okay for it just to be as simple as that. People who struggle with plant-based diets, so this is something, again, trade-offs taken into consideration. You probably need to change this about yourself, but if you're a picky eater, because you are going to have to explore a lot of foods.
And you have to try a lot of things.
If you don't have that strong why, then when you're faced with, you go to a restaurant and there's not many choices. It may just, I'll just have this, or maybe you start drinking.
Yeah.
Your inhibitions go down, and if you don't have that deep why, it's going to be harder to be sustainable sticking to, a more vegan approach on the spectrum.
Yep.
And then another's lacking time and energy, because typically you're going to, and this also, I would say this is in general for just a whole food, because it takes time for shopping. Typically you have to go shopping, you have to cook, prepare, plan, portion. All those steps are more involved when you're having whole foods. Whole foods. And then with all that, you see it's kind of nuanced.
Yeah. Shades of gray always.
That makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They want straight up answers.
Good, bad.
Yes, no.
And it's just, especially in this field, it's not cut and dry. It's not cut and dry with the working out. It's not cut and dry with nutrition. It's all on a spectrum, and a lot of it depends on the individual themselves. And, where they want to be, their values, physically, just how they are as a person. So just remember that, and that it's not 0 or 100 or vegan or carnivore or good and bad. It's a lot of that exists in the middle.
And it's important not to assume, when it comes to food, when it comes to meat and plants, plant-based diet, you don't want to assume that you know that exactly what someone's saying, right? Because in your mind, you could be plant-based, and that only means, like we talked about in the beginning, 100% vegan. So then someone talking about meat could just be completely offensive. But the reality is they could be talking about meat in the context of a plant-based diet, right? That meat could be 20% of it. And to them, they're supporting plant-based diets. That's where they're coming from.
Yep.
But if you're on a different page, then then a lot of feelings and emotions
Animosity,
come about.
yeah.
When the reality is you're closer than you are further apart. And when you're figuring out for yourself, you kind of need to decide what plant-based, what vegetarian, what that means to you.
Where's your line at?
So
What are
that-
you willing to do?
So that too, if you go to a restaurant and in your mind you're plant-based, but that means 100% vegan, and to the restaurant, plant-based could mean that most of the plate is plants.
Yep.
But then so your meal shows up and there's some butter in there.
You got to be clear.
You got a problem, right? So it's being clear on that. We'd say the second most important strategy is understanding your why. Because again, because what we're all want is majority of people want to focus on eating a whole unprocessed diet and finding an approach that's sustainable. So that's going to depend on your why. The harder it is, the more forces working against you, the deeper why you need. And the more extreme you get, this really goes for both ways. The more, like we talked about, think about that spectrum. The more towards the 100% vegan or the more towards the 100% carnivore, the harder things are going to get.
Yeah. It's just, you have less options. You have
less variety.
And more
nutrients.
working against you in terms of like food environment and other people. And it's just harder.
So find that deep why.
Find it.
And then be frank about your obstacles. A lot of people don't want to talk about the challenges that, hey, you know what? Yeah, my family, we're going to go over there for Thanksgiving. I've decided to be vegan, and it's going to be hard. Maybe they won't make any alternatives, and I have to bring my own. And now this is frustrating. My family's not supporting me. Or then you start to feel like the whole world is against you, right? But they're not. Most people really just are concerned about themselves.
Yeah, most people don't care.
Right? So then we'll end up putting a wall up because it's like me versus the world, me versus you. And then you almost have like a victim type mindset and that everyone's against you, when the reality is the more you maybe voice those obstacles and concerns
and just have real conversations with people,
the more empathy people will have.
Yeah. And when within those conversations, just trying to get somebody to understand your why is super helpful. And it doesn't always work easily. Like sometimes your family's just kind of shitty, but like it is an obstacle, but doing your best to, set boundaries and expectations is really important.
And this is where, this helps you come up with a plan. And this is why kind of each step of these things we're talking about lead into each other, because now when you start talking about these obstacles, I'm going to have family, holidays to go to. But if you've established the other things we talked about, which are know your why and what does plant-based mean to you? Well, if you've already established, plant-based means that, majority of my food is plants, but I will eat some animals, right, or some dairy. Well, now okay, when I'm faced with this obstacle of, say, Thanksgiving with the family, okay, I'll have a slice of turkey, right? Or maybe they'll have a fish option, or maybe you won't eat the meat, but you will have some dairy, so you'll be fine with the pumpkin pie, right?
Or mashed potatoes with butter.
Exactly. And then you can be more calm because you've established these things, or you'll know, no, I'm 100% plant-based. So maybe, you can eat the veggie options and then bring your own tofurkey or something.
Yeah.
And that's going to help you be more sustainable. So now you're not panicking and freaking out. You have these things figured out.
Yeah, you have a plan, and you're going to be way more at ease, and you'll probably have a better time in these experiences too. And like, there's going to be less animosity between, you and your family or you and your friends, because there is a plan and there's less to worry about in the moment.
Yeah. So that helps everything be more sustainable. And then last is, which is our number one overarching thing anyways, but is shaping your environment. Again,
Always.
You're going to have to shape your home environment, shape your work environment. You want to make, so say you're 100% vegan, you're going to want foods that fall in line with what you're trying to do to be more available, and other foods to be less available, to make things easier for you. And this is where, it's hard at first, because there may be a lot of change to, change your environment and what's convenient. But the great thing is, as you get through that stuff,
You get way better at it.
Yeah, you get better. Everything becomes easy to where then you'll feel like, this is easy. It's all automatic. It does take no effort. It becomes effortless. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about sustainability, there really is like a threshold you break through. And if you can break through that threshold, then really none of it matters. So someone could look at that scale of, 100% vegan is less sustainable and harder than omnivore whole food. But the reality is, if you eventually establish all these things, get through that threshold, then eventually it's going to feel just as easy as any of the other options.
It's a lot of work on the front end with figuring out what to get at the grocery store and how to cook a lot of these foods and what you want to include in your regular rotation, what's sustainable for your week. Like, I only have X amount of time. How can I cook, all of this food? Do I cook it ahead of time? Can I cook it the night of? Once you figure that stuff out, and this goes for any type of diet on that spectrum, it's so much easier.
Yeah.
But that front end work is harder, I would say.
Yeah. And some good ideas and tips specific to a more plant-based approach are going to be have ready to eat sliced veggies in your fridge. So boom, no prepping needed. They're there. Soak beans and lentils every Sunday. So if you probably wouldn't want to eat canned stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So it's cheaper to have the whole beans, but you do have to soak them. Right? So if you kind of set, this is my weekly meal prep, I'm going to soak these things so they're ready. That's going to help. Buying bagged, pre-washed veggies, salad mixes, obviously. And storing highly processed snacks, kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Which goes for anybody, really.
I recommend out of your house.
Yeah.
Or at least somewhere you can't see them or they're easily accessible. So boom. Those little tips kind of set you up for the two things you'd be working towards, which are eating more whole foods and eating mostly plant-based foods. So it's just, creating that environment. And then last is kind of what to eat, right? So, and obviously we've touched on specific foods and little nuances, but in general, what are some foods, right? So we'll kind of break down through your categories: protein, carbs, and fats.
Yeah, that would be good.
The one thing to realize with a plant-based diet is most of the foods are going to be higher in carbs. So by nature, to keep your total calories and everything in check and in portions, a more plant-based diet is going to typically end up being higher carb, lower fat. So again, that's a preference thing you may find. But if you love high carb, you're probably going to love
You're going to kill it.
Plant-based. So as far as protein goes, kind of more, we'll call them your pure protein options that have complete protein is your tofu, tempeh, edamame, peas, and
lentils. Lentils are a big one.
Yep. And then beans, when they're paired with rice, become a complete protein. So traditionally,
it's a classic, man.
Yeah, beans and rice. Then depending on your, like I said, we broke down pescatarian, those different levels. Some people may include plant-based yogurt. Typically, the common ones are eggs, yogurt, or dairy, and fish.
Yeah.
So maybe you include some of those. So obviously, those are protein sources. 100% vegan, you would not include those. And then your carbs, you want to focus on, whole unprocessed carbs. So that's all the grains you can think of.
Grains, potatoes.
Beans also kind of count as carbs. Oats, rice,
Fruit. Can't forget fruit.
Then you have your like more rare ones like barley, taro,
Sorghum.
sorghum.
Have you ever had sorghum?
Probably in like a processed, like some kind of weird gluten-free
Yeah,
thing.
that sounds about right.
And then bread, obviously breads.
Yeah.
But, there's going to be a level of processing, flour. There's some unprocessed bread. And then you have your fats, olive oil, and any oils, right?
Yep.
But we say that you'll specifically want to avoid animal-based fats.
course.
Obviously, fat from meat, egg yolks technically, butter. Those are things that you'll want to avoid and focus on plant-based fats like nuts.
Flax seeds, chia seeds.
Yep. Avocado, which is a fruit.
Don't you dare.
Olives are a fruit as well. So that's technically fruit oil.
Fruit oil. Do you know how wrong that sounds? Mm-hmm. Well, I
that's-
guess coconut oil is fruit oil.
Yeah, coconut, yep. So yeah, those are the foods you want to eat majority of. Obviously, you could go down your spectrum of things get more processed.
Yeah.
Have them occasionally, but less often.
Like a plant-based protein powder might be a good supplement for people, but you don't want all of your meals to just be shakes.
Yep. You have obviously all your vegetables,
Yeah.
fruits and vegetables. You know those. And yeah, we'll leave you with. So we work with vegan clients and majority plant-based clients, and the typical template, especially realize these people are also working out, so you want to make sure you're getting enough protein. 50 grams a day is the minimum amount to prevent deficiencies. Not optimal. So trying to stay closer to 50 is not ideal, especially now if you're working out. You want to try to help maintain muscle, bone, ligaments, joints. More protein's a little better. It doesn't have to be outrageous. We normally give our clients a goal of 100. If someone is like vegan, it's going to be harder because you see, like, if you're combining rice and beans, you're combining also a carb food and a carb food. So now carbs are going to get high. If you're smaller and you have to keep your calories in check, or you're trying to lose weight, that becomes a juggling act. So the template that we normally recommend is having a vegan protein supplement, which are normally made of pea and rice
And sometimes hemp protein.
and hemp,
Yeah.
some combination of
It's
those.
usually a blend of those three of some kind.
But it'll be, scoop will be like 20 grams of protein, similar to whey protein. It'll be, complete protein. So if you have that paired, you could maybe mix it in oats, right? Or stir it in some vegan yogurt, which is normally made
That's
out
a
of
good
coconut.
opportunity, yep.
Or make a shake, smoothie. So and pair it with fruit. So you're pairing it with a little carb source. You're getting that whole protein. So if you do that for like breakfast and lunch, now you've at least gotten 50. You kind of met your minimum of protein. And you also helps keep maybe your calories a little lower.
Yeah, the carbs are a little more in check when you do it that way.
And then while you're busy during the day, it's quick, easy. You're doing other stuff. Then you can come home and kind of have like a big vegan, plant-based meal and don't have to worry about the calories as much because you kind of have saved calories for the evening. You can make a more, diverse type meal, enjoy it. And then if you're, having whole foods, maybe like beans and rice or some quinoa dish or tofu and something paired with it, you're going to get some protein from that as well, right? Anywhere from 20 to 50. So now, boom, you're right there between 80, 100 grams of protein
Which
for
is
the day.
a pretty good place to be.
Yep. That's the template we normally recommend for our highly active plant-based vegan clients. And that's
It works.
seems very fairly sustainable.
Verily.
That would be our recommended starting point
For sure.
when people want to go plant-based.
Yeah. So if you do need someplace to start, like, that's a good spot. Or if you're just kind of floating in the wind, like you're vegan or plant-based and feel like you're just eating a lot of processed food, or you just don't even have a plan, you just kind of fly by the seat of your pants, that's a really good place to start. And it's simple.
And like we said, with that template, if you're including beans, they're in a lot of, they give you a lot of the nutrients you need. Make sure you maybe include some of those iron foods that we mentioned. And really then maybe supplement with B12 and you'll be good to go.
Yeah. That should cover like all of your bases. But that B12 supplement I think is pretty crucial.
Yeah. And it's cheap and easy.
Yeah, those are easy.
Works.
Yeah.
So right there, boom, there's, if you wanted your 100% vegan, sustainable, healthy, super doable approach. And you should
nutrient rich.
Yep. If you enjoy those foods, you're gonna enjoy that setup.
Yeah.
So there you go. Hopefully it helps you, gets the wheels churning, helps you realize maybe for you some things that sound appealing that don't sound appealing, where you maybe fall on the spectrum that seems enticing and sustainable.
Or maybe it helps you identify some, deficiencies or things you need to work on a little bit.
Yeah, or maybe why it hasn't worked in the past, and you can have a better chance of making a success. Because again, a lot of people be like, they'll go on a health kick, right? And everything can be a fad, and it's really more the approach than the specific method
and the expectation.
But if you've maybe been someone who's like, I'm gonna stop eating all meat because that's gonna be good for me, and then you just end up eating a bunch of processed food in its place, and then you feel like crap and have tons of cravings and no energy, and then really you just say screw it and you go back to your more omnivore unprocessed diet.
And you probably feel better.
If you're just bouncing between an omnivore highly processed diet and a vegan highly processed diet, yeah, you're not going to feel much change. You're not going to get many places. Yeah. So, and the unfortunate thing is those are more sustainable.
Yeah.
That's why they're the majority diets, because the food's readily available, more easily accessible.
Tastes better.
So yeah, so then maybe that's why when you try to go to like a more whole food vegan approach, you fail. But hopefully with, taking all these steps into account, you can have a better chance of succeeding with it.
I hope so.
Or you may find, look, majority plant includes some animal foods. Maybe you're going to be pescatarian and include fish.
Or eggs.
Or vegetarian and includes dairy. Or omnivore and include meat.
Yeah.
Find it.
Find where you fit on that spectrum for yourself. Because we're all in a different spot, and it's okay.
Yes. All right. Let us know what you thought.
Yeah. We hope that helps somebody.
There's a topic, nutrition, exercise, mindset.
Let us know.
Want addressed, reach out.
We'll do it.
All right. We'll catch you guys later.
See ya. As always, thanks for listening, guys. If you want to learn more, check us out at coastalfitnessva.com or garydeagle.com. We'll see you next time.